James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club. We don't use that emoji anymore. Woke, please, we say fetch now.
Bill Maher is now taking direct aim at AOC for brushing aside the entire woke debate and, in his view, steering the country further off course. After suffering noticeable setbacks at the ballot box, many expected Democrats to recalibrate and move closer to the middle. That never happened. Instead, some of the party's most visible figures, AOC front and center, appear determined to double down on progressive ideology, regardless of the political fallout.
That said, I would love to have AOC on this show. There's so much to admire there. I was one of her first supporters for the Green New Deal idea. But that will probably never happen because Democrats don't go anywhere these days where they're not pre-adored. And that's my last bit of advice to them. Go where the amen corner isn't. Do Fox News. Be brave. Come here. Go everywhere. Winning is about expanding the electorate.
And Maher doesn't soften the blow. In this segment, he methodically breaks down AOC's latest comments and challenges the ideas behind them head-on. This isn't a casual disagreement. It escalates quickly. Settle in, because Maher wastes no time turning the heat all the way up.
What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders they're oppressors. That's all your new thing.
Here's where Maher's argument gets especially sharp. He suggests AOC isn't worried about embracing progressive ideology. She's worried about being labeled for it. The message feels like, support everything, just don't say the word out loud. Even while trying to distance herself from the label, she ends up reinforcing it. That contradiction is exactly what Maher calls out. His critique goes beyond phrasing. He targets an entire movement of activists who reject the woke label while promoting ideas that have strayed far from traditional liberal principles. Maher argues that liberalism once stood for open discussion, reason, and listening. Today, he says, it's been replaced by moral absolutism and hypersensitivity that barely resembles its original meaning.
A more pertinent question to ask about the word woke might be, why in such a short time has it gone from a rallying cry to a pejorative? If the word only made you think of rational, deserved causes like teaching a less whitewashed version of American history, AOC would still want to own it. But it's a joke because it makes you think of people who wake up offended and take orders from Twitter, and their oversensitivity has grown tiresome.
Maher goes further, arguing that figures like AOC and Bernie Sanders don't represent classical liberal values at all, values rooted in free speech, debate, and practical governance. Even the word woke, he notes, has been transformed. What once meant awareness of real social challenges has expanded into a catch-all for extreme positions that many Americans find alienating. Instead of focusing on solutions for working families, the emphasis has shifted toward language enforcement, ideological purity tests, and constant cultural battles. Maher's conclusion is blunt. Modern woke politics has drifted far away from both liberalism and the everyday concerns of ordinary people.
People ask me all the time, why haven't you ever had Hillary or Bill Clinton on? Why didn't you have Kamala on during the last campaign? You think we don't ask? We ask these people every week. They say no. It took 8 years and a petition to get Obama on. And these are people, all people I voted for. Think about that. They're afraid to come on the show of a guy who voted for them. The Republicans? They show up.
Longtime viewers know Maher has repeatedly invited Democratic leaders to face tough conversations on his show. He's issued open invitations, extended personal requests, and publicly challenged them to engage. Yet they rarely accept. Maher believes the reason is simple. He won't allow guests to repeat scripted talking points without scrutiny. Though he identifies as a Democrat, he prioritizes accountability and honest debate. That makes him a risky platform for politicians who rely on carefully controlled messaging. Appearing on his show means confronting contradictions in real time, and many prefer to avoid that exposure altogether.
The people all the goodies Joe Manchin will allow. And it doesn't seem to buy their love. Why? Why is the party that supports so many issues that benefit the middle class still considered out of touch by 62% of Americans? In plain English, nobody likes a snob. Hillary Clinton didn't have anyone on rural research or outreach when she ran in 2016 until the race tightened just before the election. Then they hired one. And where was his office? Brooklyn. True story. Politics is local, not locally sourced. It's not artisan. It's art and stand.
Maher argues that today's Democratic leadership is more invested in performance than problem solving. Instead of listening to everyday voters, they cater to the loudest activist voices, groups that don't necessarily reflect the broader electorate. Maher emphasizes that politics is supposed to be local and practical. It's about understanding people's daily struggles and addressing them directly. But leaders like AOC, he says, appear far more focused on ideological clashes than governance. His warning is clear. If Democrats want to rebuild trust, they need less theater and more tangible results.
Your microaggression culture doesn't play in the Rust Belt. If a staffer hands you a speech that says menstruating people instead of women, don't say that. Say women. Don't put anyone fresh out of college in charge of the campaign. They've been given participation trophies their whole life. They don't know how to win.
Maher then lists specific cultural and political missteps he believes contributed to Democratic losses. One example is the redefinition of basic terms, replacing long-standing language with clinical phrases that many Americans find confusing or unnecessary. Another is education culture, where he argues standards were lowered in favor of participation over achievement. That mindset, Maher says, spilled into politics and workplaces, where merit often took a backseat to optics. These weren't minor miscalculations, in his view. They were visible signs of ideological overreach that signaled a disconnect from everyday reality.
To a lot of folks in America, you come across as the cares about everybody but me party. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to stand up for these folks without being David Duke. This month, when the Democrats finally passed their big $1 trillion bill to rebuild our roads and bridges, 6 Democrats voted no because it didn't go far enough to address climate change, which I'm sure is true. What does? But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change. But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway.
Maher also criticizes what he sees as misplaced priorities. Democrats, he argues, often show greater urgency for international causes than for challenges facing American communities. While energy is poured into symbolic global gestures, domestic issues like affordability, infrastructure, and public safety remain unresolved. He highlights rejected funding proposals that could have addressed immediate problems but were dismissed over ideological disagreements. Maher's argument isn't anti-environment. It's about sequencing. Solve urgent needs first, then negotiate broader goals. When ideology blocks action, voters notice and grow frustrated.
And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hole up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people. or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Maher points to the peak of ideological excess when fringe activists made claims that clashed openly with basic biological understanding. Instead of encouraging open discussion, dissent was shut down. Questions, even respectful ones, were treated as hostility. The expectation wasn't dialogue but compliance. Maher argues this marked a turning point where inclusion gave way to enforcement. For many Americans, the constantly shifting rules became exhausting. What was framed as progress began to feel disconnected from common sense.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer. That's why. Their message to you was, "I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard."
Ultimately, Maher's critique goes far beyond AOC or terminology. It's about a party that, in his view, prioritized ideology over outcomes. From redefining language to elevating symbolism above solutions, Democrats lost touch with the people they serve. Maher insists voters didn't reject the party out of ignorance or cruelty. They walked away because debate was shut down and real concerns were ignored. His message is direct. Stop policing language, stop catering to extremes, and start solving real problems. Until that happens, critics like Maher will keep speaking out, and voters will continue responding at the polls. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you found it insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.